has been retained to represent iconic civil rights and community leader Theotis Robinson Jr. Theotis is someone that needs no introduction. He has served our community for many, many years. He was the first African American that attended the University of Tennessee after the landmark decision of Brown versus Board of Education. He has been bestowed an honorary doctorate degree by the university and has excelled. He is a prolific writer and editorialist and is frequently published in the Knoxville News Sentinel, USA Today, and is known for his political commentary. The reason we are here, recently Theotis Robinson Jr. has written a number of articles containing his thoughts and his opinions, and has exercised his First Amendment right for political speech. He has been an outspoken opponent of the president and details some of his beliefs in many of these articles. During the last week, Mr. Robinson has been receiving a number of phone calls from friends, random people, noting that they have received robocalls of a political nature. Now, I'll let Theotis tell you what his understanding of those calls, but if you can see on the screen, that is a screenshot that an individual sent Mr. Robinson, where before this robocall comes on, it shows Mr. Robinson's name and his phone number. This is a violation of Tennessee law. Our statutes deem this spoofing, but we think it's, we don't know who did it. Today we're going to ask law enforcement to investigate the hijacking of his name, his likeness, his phone number, and we think it's in retaliation for the exercise of his political beliefs and free speech. But I will let Mr. Robinson address you as to his thoughts on this very unfortunate development that has recently taken place.
Will you just give us a quick minute here to move our microphones?
Yeah. What about us showing his number and his name? Did you change numbers?
Well, since it's out.
Well, I'd like the number, not to show. The name is fine.
Okay.
You got through?
Yeah, you go ahead, and then I'll go over you. I've got to make sure.
The word retaliation for those opinion pieces, right?
I did.
Okay.
And one clarification for you, I was the first African American undergraduate student at UT. The law school and the graduate school began to be segregated in 1952 by virtue of a federal appeals court ruling, 630.
All right, Theotis, tell us your thoughts on this very unfortunate.
You know, if you don't mind me saying it, that hanging down doesn't look too good on you.
You can just go ahead and take it off.
Yeah.
You're fine.
I'll leave it here. Oh, maybe.
I knew you were trying to make a statement,
Yes.
but, you know,
Okay, okay,
however you look there.
all right.
Theotis, tell us your thoughts on this unfortunate recent development.
About 10 days ago, I began receiving phone calls on my home phone from people that I did not know, from phone numbers that I did not recognize. They ranged far beyond this local area of East Tennessee. I've had phone calls from Arkansas, Louisiana, the east coast of Georgia, down around Valdosta, Georgia. I don't know how far north, because I didn't begin monitoring those calls immediately. But they were returning calls based on having received a call from my number, and they were, we showed on their phones as missed calls. So they were calling back to see if it was someone they knew, and it was something that they needed to hear from whomever had placed the call. A few people actually answered the phone and heard the message, and I definitely heard from some of those. After answering the call showing my name and my phone number, when they answer, they pick up and it's the voice of Donald Trump saying that he's running for re-election and asking for their support and soliciting contributions. Now, whether the Trump campaign has anything to do with this, I have no idea. It could simply be some of his supporters who are spooking me in this fashion because of what Attorney Isaac said based on columns that I've written, and people who know and have read my columns know that I'm a critic of his administration. I think it falls far short of the leadership that the country needs during this time of crisis. And so some of my close friends have even ribbed me about that they thought that that I was a hidden supporter of Donald Trump, which clearly I am not. But the public needs to be aware of these kinds of dirty tricks that get played in campaigns. Dirty tricks are not uncommon in political campaigns, but I choose not to be a victim of such tactics. I still continue to speak up and voice my opinion in terms of not only the Trump administration, but any other area of public discourse that I think needs to be spoken to. For example, the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic and other matters. For example, also the matter that's going on now concerning Black Lives Matter and the police reforms that we need not only in this city and in this state, but nationally. So my voice will not be silenced, but I wanted to call attention to these tactics because I feel like my character is being defamed by these robocalls that tend to associate me or want to associate me with Donald Trump, and I will have no part of that.
Once again, I would ask that we don't show Mr. Robinson's personal home phone number, but that screenshot illustrates the links that some individual or individuals have gone to convince callers that he is asking, he being Mr. Robinson, to support the Trump candidacy. Having said this and heard from Mr. Robinson, we will take a few questions if anyone has anything for myself or Mr. Robinson.
So people were getting calls, their caller ID showing your name, your number, and on the other end of the call was a really call for support of the president's campaign.
That's correct. That is absolutely correct. And I've had several who have listened to that call and who stand ready to sign sworn affidavits that that is what the message was, showing the call coming from me from my home phone number.
You said your friends ripped you a little bit about your
Oh,
communities.
yes. These are close friends, including one of my brothers.
And it's obviously a little ironic that that would be coming from your number, given that you're critical of the president, but does it feel, so it might be a little funny at times, but does it also feel like you've been violated, like you're,
Yes. For example, just on yesterday, between the hours of 5 and 6 o'clock p.m., I had 10 calls from people calling in response to showing a missed phone call from me on their phones. 10 calls right at the dinner hour is an inconvenience and an irritant to have to experience and go through. They started again this morning, I guess around 9 a.m. And last night, the latest call that came through was about 10 after 10. To have 20 or 30, I have been experiencing roughly 20 to 30 calls per day. And that's a distraction for me in just pursuing my life as I would like to pursue it, which I intend to pursue.
This question is for you, Mr. Isaac. Have you guys been in contact with KPD, or which law enforcement agency are you asking to look upon this?
Well, we're planning today to notify the Knox County Attorney General's office of this violation of spoofing, and we're going to let them make the decision on whether to contact the TBI, the FBI, et cetera. But you know, it's really unfortunate, and one thing I would encourage individuals to do is to Google and research Theotis Robinson Jr. and read his articles. And you need to get a feel for the free speech that he has expressed, as he has the constitutional right, and we all have that right. And it's just extraordinarily unfortunate that shortly after these series of articles, his likeness, his home phone number have been hijacked and used in a very retaliatory way that is the antithesis of what he has expressed in his editorial opinions. And we are cautiously optimistic that law enforcement will vigorously investigate this violation, and we can find out who or whom is involved in this. But, you know, think about it, it's very chilling because, you know, someone's political expression, right to political expression, their right to support a political candidate is, you know, the hallmark of our fundamental freedoms, and to take that away from someone, or anyone, someone such as Mr. Robinson, whose voice carries great weight throughout a number of segments of our community, both locally and on the national level, is unfortunate, it's wrong, and we're going to ask that people be held accountable and that it stop.
Let me also add, some of the people who have called me have received several calls from a number, received missed calls on their phones at home that indicate that I have called them to the point of distraction for them, and I've had a few threatening calls like that. One fellow said that he knew who I was and he'd be looking for me after having had his phone ringing at home 3 or 4 times showing my number. And you know, that becomes threatening from a standpoint of people out there thinking that I am calling them and hanging up. That's just not to be tolerated.
You know, I was thinking that when it first started happening, did you contact the cell phone?
We called the phone company. They said it was spoofing, but there was nothing that they could do about that, which I don't understand, but that was what the person on the other end of the line said. Now, whether or not, if you went up the chain of command with the phone company, that would still be the same response. I have no idea. But that was their initial response, that they could not do anything about spoofing.
And then you jumped to getting an attorney to help.
Yes, I did, because I feel violated. And I feel that my name is being besmirched by these phone calls. I've worked in this community ever since I was 16, 17 years old. And I will not have my character assassinated by a series of phone calls associating me with Donald Trump, with whom I am not associated in any form, shape, or fashion. So yes, I retained an attorney to strike back, to defend myself against this character assassination, the defamation of my name.
And one thing I think is important to point out in what we're going to focus on, and I think you can tell how passionately Theotis believes in his rights in political speech, but when we contact the Knox County Attorney General's office, we want to be clear that we want to focus on the illegality of this act. So it's not just because the robocall says support Donald Trump or purports to be the voice of the president. This would be as illegal and terrible if a staunch person on the other end of the political spectrum had written articles such as these and was retaliated against by robocalls and said vote for Biden. So, you know, one thing we don't want people to lose track of is, you know, political speech is the center of this retaliation, but it is simply and plainly against the law to use someone's likeness and phone number in this retaliatory manner, whether it's, say, vote for Trump or vote for Biden. And, you know, this just a tremendous violation for Mr. Robinson and his family when they're eating dinner and people are calling and people are threatening. It's unfortunate. But we're cautiously optimistic that once law enforcement is informed of this, that this matter can be remedied. But it's very, very unfortunate, and we hope that it ends very soon.
I have a couple. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, in the meantime, is his name or his phone number being redacted from, you know, newspaper publications or anything like that? Is there a way that you guys are working on doing to try and get that out of?
Well, we're asking everyone here as a professional courtesy, we want to illustrate, you know, pictures worth 1,000 words. What is popping up on phones throughout the United States? And we're asking you not to show his private phone number, but really there's nothing we can do once the genie's out of the bottle. It's kind of hard, but we are not in any way promoting releasing Mr. Robinson's number. We are simply showing exactly what has taken place in this spoofing.
Mr. Robinson, you said you received calls from several states.
Yes.
Did anyone you know personally, perhaps here in Knoxville, receive one of these calls?
Yes. I've had a few people whom I know personally. One is a member of my church who received this kind of call. Another couple who have been longtime friends over the past 30 years has received this same phone call and heard the message. So yes, in instances, it's been few of people that I know. I recall there was one other gentleman who previously served in the state legislature who received a call. He was not there to answer the call, but it showed up as a missed call coming from me, and he called me back. We talked about it for a minute. I did not tell him what the outgoing political message was had he actually answered the call. But yes, there have been a few people who I know personally.
It sounds like then, and correct me if I'm wrong, that is there any sort of pattern in who's receiving the calls? If people are receiving them in other states, but they're also receiving them here, it's not just, you know, if you have a cell phone, it's not just people in your contact list, it's all sorts of people.
These calls are coming through on my landline, not my cell phone number.
Right.
But yes, they have come generally from the East Tennessee area. I do recall one that came from area code 423, which obviously is also in this area. But those coming from East Georgia, from Arkansas, from Louisiana are inexplicable to me.
Mm-hmm. It's sort of like how when you get a spam call, it may come from the same area code, even though it's not anyone from your area code.
Yes. So just so I've got it right, one phone number hijacked, right? One, the home line was the only one?
Yes.
And when did the call start, to your knowledge?
They started on Wednesday of last week. What would that be, about the 17th?
That was following your recent opinion piece and.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that was my last question for you. Learned a lot about you this morning. I've read several of your pieces. You don't hold back. And I'm just curious if this type of event will deter you from exercising your First Amendment rights in the future.
It only adds fuel to my passion. I consider myself a truth teller. I will not shrink from that duty and responsibility. I don't care how many robocalls go out showing my name as the caller. supporting the incumbent president. But no, I will not retreat. I don't know the meaning of that word.
All right, any final question for Mr. Robertson?
I got one more for you, Greg. If that's all right.
Sure.
I did an article on spoofing a while back, and I think, if I recall correctly, it was a violation of federal law and state law. So you said you're going to get the DA's office involved, let them make the decision on how they want to proceed with the investigation. I think the law also requires that it be done with an intent to defraud, harm, or wrongly obtain something. In this case, would it be that his reputation was harmed, Mr. Robinson's?
Absolutely, because, if you look, and that is, Travis, exactly what Tennessee law says, but what they've done is they've taken the essence of his exercise of political speech and then turned it against him and created the erroneous impression that he is actively soliciting campaigns for President Trump. And again, it's not about Republicans, Democrats, Trump, Biden. It's about taking this man's likeness after he has very articulately and passionately expressed his opinion and turning it upside down, hijacking his identity. And you can see the fallout, not only using his name in a way that he does not consent or appreciate, but also the invasion of privacy when people are calling him and going, why are you repeatedly calling my number? The individual or individuals would have to know that they are creating a firestorm, and we believe it is retaliatory for his exercise of his First Amendment rights, his political speech, and he wants it to stop. But what I am strongly encouraged, and to echo what Mr. Robinson says, although this spoofing hopefully will stop, his opinions certainly will not. So if the intent was to have a chilling effect on political speech as it relates to individuals in this room, that did not work. So we're going to start the wheels in motion this afternoon, and hopefully this can be remedied fairly expeditiously.
I have just one more, sorry.
Sure.
You may have already said this. Did the calls specifically seek donations?
Apparently, they do.
Mm.
Because after that outgoing message from Donald Trump goes, then hands off. I've had some of those calls myself from the Trump campaign. At least I assume they were from the Trump campaign, originated in Washington, D.C. as well as New York, where they do ask for donations. You press one of the buttons on your phone, I don't remember what the prompt said, to connect you with an operator to solicit contributions. One time I decided to go ahead and punch that and got a voice on the line to whom I explained there was no way in hell that I would be doing this, and I wanted to engage them in a conversation, but they immediately hung up.
But just in your particular case with the calls that were spoofed from your number, do you know exactly whether it requested, push a button for an operator or go online and donate? Do you know that detail?
I don't definitively know that definition, but based on the conversations that I've had with people who did answer the call, I think it prompts for a contribution.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I want to thank everybody for coming, and please give us the professional courtesy of not publishing his personal phone number.
I've received enough calls already.
And thank you. You guys have a great day.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Would it be okay to show some of those?
Yeah, sure. Let me.
Can we get a copy of that photo so we can redact the phone number for use?
Or even if you have a copy, we can, put a piece of paper over